sewing family. Welcome to Conquering Mount Scrapmore with Brenda. I'm Brenda and I'm going to be your hostess today for our very first case study. The first case study we're going to do is a Churn Dash block. We're going to cover just color placement in this video, and then we will go through all sorts of other ideas to help you be more creative in your quilting adventure. Okay, first thing we're going to need is one center block like this, and I'm making mine 12 inches square finished in a quilt block, or it'll be 12.5 unfinished in a quilt block. So we need one center square, 4.5 by 4.5 inches. We need 4 white or cream colored 4.5 inch squares, and we need 4 colored 4.5 inch squares. We're also going to need about 22 inches of a color that is 2.5 inches by 22 inches, and white or cream colored or whatever of a 2.5 by 22 inch long piece, right? So what we're going to do is, I've already sewed some of these together, but I'm going to show you how I do my sewing, okay? Okay. First off, we're going to take the back or the wrong side of the cream colored square, or white or low volume or whatever they're calling it nowadays, and we're going to draw a line from tip to tip. Right? So there it is, and I'm just using a regular HB pencil, nothing fancy, something you can do. And you don't need one of these skinny little rulers either. You can get a ruler, a regular ruler, and do this. But I now am going to draw a second line. I'm going to line my ruler up against that line that I just drew and draw another line, because I'm going to make 2 triangles out of this. And this I find is really efficient for using up your scraps. You get a bigger block and you get little blocks. So here we go. And now I'm going to put them right sides together with the other 4 dark brown colors, right? So we're going to make 4 of them. So now I'm going to just sew down the middle, just kissing that long diagonal line I drew from point to point. And I'm on the side I'm going to cut off. When I get to the end, I'm going to just pull it out a bit, pivot, and sew down that other line. So I'm making basically 2 different size triangles out of this 4.5 inch square. And now, since I'm lined up already, I'm going to take my 22 by 2.5 inch strips of brown and white, put the right sides together, and run them through the sewing machine as well. The white strip was just a little bit longer than the dark color, so I cut it off, and I'm going to use that in a different quilt pattern. So as I come up with these scrappy excesses that are 2.5, I'm going to cut them down to like log cabin size. So now I'll just get through this and put a piece through. And then we'll meet you at the ironing board to show you how to iron them. So now that we've sewn these 2 strips together with a 1/4 inch seam, right, we're going to make sure we embed the fabric or the thread into the fabric by setting our seams. We're also going to do the double, okay, we're also going to shift over here, and we're going to do the one that we cut, that we did 2 lines of sewing on. Okay? Now what I'm going to do with this first is I'm going to open it up, and we're going to press to the dark. So the dark side is up, and then I'm just going to gently press so I don't have any little mini pleats in there. And now I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to put a tailor's clapper my husband made for me. And we're just going to shuffle that along and wait for it to, the weight of the wood will actually make your seam flatter. Yes, I know there's scraps, but you know, you still need the time for pressing and everything else. Now with this double seam square, we have 2 stitch lines. So we're just going to cut through the stitch lines as straight as we can. And we have about a 1/4 inch seam, but that's okay. So there we go. So we have about a 1/4 inch seam. So we're going to, again with the dark on the top, we're going to just heat that up and then push that seam over and hold it in place, and then get that clapper on there and make it nice and flat. And then, there we go. Sorry if my arms are in the way. And again, this is going to be a perfect 4.5 inch. This is going to end up being a perfect 4.5 inch half square triangle. And this one's going to be the little brother. But it has dog ears on it, so we have to trim those. Okay, and now we're going to go to the cutting table. Okay, now we're at my cutting table, and the first thing we're going to do with our the little half square triangles is cut off the dog ears, right? And then you make it into a very usable, cute little half square triangle. Now we're going to use those later in a different block, so hang on to them, don't throw them out. Next, we're going to line up our strips. Now, because I'm working with scraps, right? I don't have a 22-inch length of the dark fabric, but I had a couple of other pieces that would kind of add up to it. So what I'm going to do is trim off my one end. Not a lot of waste so far. And then spin it around. And now I'm going to cut 2 at a time, 4.5 inch triangles. Now, you're going to make sure that your line is here, so you're following the seam, and you've got a good line here to give you a perfect 4.5 inch square. So I need 4 of them to make this block. Okay. And because my strips were a little generous, I now am going to cut a 2.5 inch piece off of these to make a 4-pack. So out of all the stuff I had, this is my scrap. I don't have a lot of scrap that I'm throwing out. Okay, let's go back to the sewing machine. Okay, so now that we're back at the sewing machine and I have all of my subunits made, I know I made some where you didn't see me making. I'm going to put them on my design board that my friend Jamie made for me. Basically, it's a sturdy cardboard covered with flannel. So this is our accent piece, and that always goes in the middle. And when a traditional churn dash kind of looks like this. And it has all the color pointing towards the middle on the half square triangles. And then on these subunits, all the color is there. Now, color placement plays a big part in this block because this is a very typical churn dash. When people think churn dash, that's what they're normally thinking of. As soon as you do a negative churn dash where you put all the white into the middle, it takes on a completely different look. As you see in this sample here, right? Now I have another sample of these churn dashes, because I'm making more than one, where you've got the dark and then you have the light, right? So what I'm going to say now is, if we change just one element of this block, let's take the corners, only the corners. Color placement even changes its name, because now this block is called a Greek cross, or Churn Dash 2.0. So this is the block we're going to make, and this is what it's going to look like when it's finished. So let me just put this all together. And I web my blocks when they're pieced like this. And webbing your blocks means you take a column and you lay the middle column, you take this column is on down, and then it just flips over like this, right? And you sew them in order. I love churn dashes. They're such a cute, adorable little block. They're very forgiving. They're very, you know, they're easy to do. And you remember that 2.5 inch strip? Well, I put them side by side, and we're going to make a little 4-patch. And I'm going to use these little 4 patches in the borders of my quilt, maybe. Or I could save them for another quilt, but they're definitely going to be tone matched to the quilt I'm making here. And basically, it's kind of like putting something in so you can cut the bigger block off. Okay, then, so this is what we got sewn so far. And now, we're going to sew the rest of it. We're going to take this and move this through. And you can do this webbing technique for pretty much any block where you have a lot of little pieces that have to go in a certain order. It's really a fast way of doing things. Get the next one, and just chain it through. And the next one gets chained through again, just easy placement. And now those little triangles go through. And I'm going to lay them out in a pinwheel. Right? Because I'm going to use pinwheels in a different quilt here in a bit. But not this one. But at least now I'm managing my scraps. So I'm going to take one, and I'm just going to sew it through. And these extra bonus pinwheels or little 4 patches, they sure add up very quickly. And what I do in the middle of my 4 patch and my pinwheel that I'm going to make, and even in this block, is I swirl my seams to make them nice and flat. Can you hold that up? And can you show the other side? Awesome. So now I take my web block and I'm going to sew the first one over, the first row down to the rest of it. Now I just get it started and I snip that first seam open So where the connecting thread is on the web, I just pop it open. Now I'm choosing to press these all, put them all the same way. So they'll all nest together in the quilt, or they'll lay a little flatter on a block. I've got several ideas for the blocks ahead, so I hope you come back and join us. So anyways, here we go. There's the first one. You're just sewing these blocks, these subunits together with a really cute 1/4 inch seam. Now we're going to do the next part of the pinwheel, put that through. This kind of ends up being a leader and ender for the bigger square. Just nice, neat 1/4 inch seam. Quilters all run to their 1/4 inch seam. Got it halfway, more than halfway done. So now I'm going to put the bigger piece on the bottom and flip the little piece on top to get the last bit of sewing done. Hang on. And I love a good vintage machine. This was my mom's, the one I'm sewing on right now. Yeah, I was very, very happy when I got it. It still sews beautifully. It's from the 50s. And this is the sewing machine actually I learned to sew on. It just does a straight stitch. There's no fancy stitches. The zigzag is an attachment. And it's such a powerful machine now still that when I use the zigzag attachment, it's kind of have to chase it around the room because it vibrates so much. So I don't do much zigzagging on here. And now right at the end, and now we're going to finish our little pinwheel. You just put your pinwheel bits together, flip it over, and you do all of these the same. They become kind of a real quick thing to do. Okay. Nest your seams. And cut that one free, and there we go. Another Churn Dash 2.0 or Greek cross. So we're gonna show you how to press this out so it lays nice and flat. Just let me get this pinwheel off. Okay. There we go. And there we go. Back to the ironing board. And now back to the ironing board.
It's okay.
Okay, now we're back at the ironing board with our 3 blocks we just made out of those squares and rectangles. So you can see they're not lying really flat because they haven't been pressed yet. So we're just going to put the little pinwheel and the 4-patch aside for a minute. So we're going to flip this over because I like starting from the other side. Now I spin my seams just by breaking them open, just cranking over those little things, just to make sure that my block is going to lay as flat as it can, right? So now I'm going to iron it from the wrong side. I'm going to grab my tailor's clapper, and we're going to start pressing this open, just like this. We're pressing this down. You just take your time and just, heat your fabric. Nobody's in a rush. There's no hurry. Okay, there, now just gonna give it a bit more heat, get my clapper on it. There we go. And I'll get the other. Sorry if my arm's in the way. And we're just moving this along, getting all seams to lie as flat as we can. Now some people press open. I mean, you can press these open. You can press all your seams open if you want. I mean, it all works. Okay, just going to lay this down like that. Make sure, oh, that didn't catch. And just press a little bit more. Give it a little swish. Now, one of the great things with these tailor's clappers is that your seams lay flat and they stay flat. Right, so now I'm going to flip it over and make sure I haven't got any mini pleats, because mini pleats will change the size of your block. And just give it a nice press. If you wanted to, you could give it a nice starch. Give it a little starch, give it a little body. And there is our Churn Dash 2.0. And now we're going to take you through just a quick press on the fort patch. Now I'm pressing again from the back, making sure my seam is spun open so it lays nice and flat. Get some tailor clapper on there. And give it a little press from the front. Yes, it's looking lovely. See? So cute. And now the last one, again, I've already broke the center seam. So it's just a matter now of pressing it so all the seams spin. In this case, they're spinning all counterclockwise. So I'm just going to make sure everything stays down. Put a little weight to it. Go the other way. A little more weight. And now we have an adorable pinwheel as well. Now I can use these pinwheels or fort patches in my border if I want. Or I can use them in an entirely different quilt. And they do stack up very quickly. Okay, that wraps up our part 1 of our case study on Churn Dash's color placement. I hope you had fun with this and were able to see things. If you wanted better close-ups or something, or you're not sure of techniques, please put in the comments below. I'll try my best to try and get things out to you. We're going to be putting the part 2 up here probably in the next couple of days. So stand by. Hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. And by the way, these little ones, these little pinwheels and fort patches, they add up really quickly. So you can make another adorable quilt. Okay, there's lots here. Look, just from the work of the Churn Dashes I've already done. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you have a lovely day. Okay, bye.